In 1972, a body washed up on the shore of Loch Ness, and within hours, the police had taken it away. That is not a figure of speech. Officers physically seized the carcass, loaded it into a vehicle, and impounded it, acting under a Scottish law written in 1933 for one specific purpose: to make it illegal to kill, capture, or remove the Loch Ness Monster. For a few hours, in the eyes of the state, Scotland had a monster corpse and it was evidence. Then the scientists got to it, and what they found is the reason nobody has taken a body at Loch Ness seriously since. But the story does not end there, because more than 150 years earlier, something else washed ashore in Scotland, and that one was measured, sworn to under oath, examined by anatomists, and never explained. This is what actually came out of the water, why the case was closed before it was finished, and what is still sitting in a museum drawer waiting for someone to test it. Start with why a body at Loch Ness matters more than a photograph. Loch Ness is over 20 miles long and drops more than 700 feet, holding more fresh water than every lake in England and Wales combined. The water is stained brown-black with peat, so visibility collapses to almost nothing a few feet down. And the floor is not rock. It is 100 feet of soft silt that has been settling since the ice left. Anything that dies in that loch sinks into it and stays there. It does not float, it does not surface, it does not wash ashore. Hold that, because it is the reason a carcass on the beach at Loch Ness is not just interesting, it is nearly impossible. Which is exactly why the 1972 body caused the reaction it did. A team was found with it at dawn, the police were called, the law was invoked, and the news went out across the world before anyone had looked at it properly. The animal was around 15 feet long, greenish-gray, with a flat head and flippers. And when zoologists finally examined it, the answer came fast, and it was humiliating. It was an elephant seal. A dead bull elephant seal from a zoo hundreds of miles away, its whiskers shaved off, its jaw altered, kept on ice and driven north overnight as a stunt. The men who found it had put it there. That is the whole reason a corpse at Loch Ness now means nothing to anyone. One hoax executed well, and the door closed on the entire category of evidence. Nobody investigates a body at that loch anymore because everybody already knows how the story ends. And that is the mistake, because it was not always the answer. Go back to 1808, to the Scottish coast north of the mainland, where a carcass came ashore after a storm on the island of Stronsay. Local men found it on the rocks and did something the 1972 hoaxers never had to face. They measured it, 3 of them, independently, and then they swore statements about the measurement in front of a magistrate, legally binding testimony given by fishermen and a farmer with no stake in the outcome and every reason not to perjure themselves. The length they swore to was 55 feet. It had a small head, a long tapering neck, a body with what they described as 3 pairs of limbs, and a coarse mane of bristles running down its back. Keep that number, 55 feet, because everything in this case turns on it, and it is the one detail nobody has ever been able to explain away. The remains went to Edinburgh, and this is where it stops being a fisherman's story. The Natural History Society examined what had survived the journey. Patrick Neal, the Society's secretary and a serious naturalist, wrote it up. They concluded they were looking at a species unknown to science and gave it a name. For a brief period, the Scottish sea serpent was not folklore. It was a described animal in the scientific literature based on physical remains, backed by sworn testimony. Then London answered. Sir Everard Home, an anatomist of considerable standing, examined the material and declared it a decomposed basking shark, and the case was effectively closed from that moment on. And he was not being unreasonable. The explanation is genuinely good. A basking shark rots in a very specific and misleading way. The jaw and gill structure fall away first, leaving the small brain case attached to the spine, which reads to the eye as a tiny head on a long neck. What remains of the fins can look like paired limbs. The exposed muscle fibers dry into coarse strands that look exactly like a mane. This is a real, documented phenomenon. Decomposing basking sharks have produced fake sea serpents on beaches all over the world for 2 centuries. Everything the men on Stronsay described, the shape, the neck, the mane, the limbs, a rotting basking shark accounts for all of it. Except one thing: basking sharks do not reach 55 feet. The largest reliably recorded specimens fall well short of 40. The explanation that fits the shape does not fit the size, and the size is the one measurement 3 men swore to under oath in front of a magistrate, with a ruler, on solid ground, in daylight. Holmes never examined the carcass on the beach. He examined fragments in London after they had been shipped, and he corrected the witnesses on the only fact they had actually verified. The testimony was never refuted. It was overruled from a distance because the alternative was a 55-foot animal that nobody could name. And here's what makes this a live case rather than a historical curiosity. The remains were not all lost. Vertebrae from the Stronsay carcass survive to this day in a museum collection, physical material from an animal that washed ashore over 200 years ago sitting in a drawer. We now have techniques that did not exist for Everard Home or for anyone else who argued about this. Ancient DNA can be recovered from bone that old. A single sequencing run would end the argument in an afternoon. It would either return basking shark and close the file for good, or it would return something else. That test has never been done. So we are left with 2 bodies, one at Loch Ness in 1972 that turned out to be a shaved seal from a zoo, and which taught an entire generation that carcasses in Scotland are always fakes, and one on Stronsay in 1808, sworn to at 55 feet by men under oath, examined by a scientific society, and dismissed by a man who never saw it whole. The convenient story is that they are the same story. They are not. And the loch itself makes the darker point. 100 feet of silt on the floor means that whatever dies down there is never coming up. In 2 centuries of watching the most scrutinized body of water on Earth, the only corpse that has ever reached the shore of Loch Ness is the one somebody carried there in a van. Everything real that has ever died in that water is still on the bottom, under the silt, in the dark, where no one will ever look. We do not lack a body. We lack the one place we would find it. And the one specimen we do have from a Scottish beach with sworn measurements attached is sitting in a museum drawer, unsequenced, waiting for somebody to be curious enough to open it. If you have ever found something on a shoreline you could not identify, a shape, a bone, a thing the tide left that nobody could name, tell me where you were in the comments. And subscribe, because the water has not finished giving up what it hides. It has barely started.